Hi guys, welcome back to According to Blake. And today, be prepared to question everything that you've ever been told about skincare. Today, I am joined by Dr. Angelo Landricina. You might know him as Dermangelo. Hello.
Hi, Blake. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for coming because I feel like every time you post a video, I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought. I'm like, oh, that's not what I thought. So let's backtrack because so many med students, the specialty of dermatology is so specific that there are so few of you all that actually go into the field. So how did you get into dermatology? Has this always been what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I always say that I kind of took a weird path. A lot of people find themselves becoming dermatologists because at first they wanted to be doctors, they go to medical school, and they either fall in love with the specialty or they decide that it's, lucrative and it has good work-life balance, and maybe they scored really well on their board exams, and then they decide to be a dermatologist. For me, I always say I never wanted to be a doctor. I only wanted to be a dermatologist.
I love the two are, yes, I get it. I know exactly what you mean when you say that.
So, I mean, that was from the time I was a teenager, it was like really my goal. And I just kept following that path. I think it wasn't really set out for me. I ended up figuring out that not only in kind of like the academic world, but also especially within medicine, like nepotism is huge.
Yeah.
And having the resources to have, people to tell you what to do is, just kind of a given for most people. I come from a very working class background. I had nobody in my family who had any idea about anything. So it was really like toughing it out and working hard. And I think for me, in retrospect, one thing that I've been talking about lately is, how all these people say, oh, like, be delusional, delulu this, delulu that.
That's what the girls say.
Yeah. So, to me, delusion, if you actually look at the definition, is like you're convinced of something that is verifiably not true. I was not delusional. I just fantasized my way into the life that I wanted. And I believed the fantasy, even at times when I was being told it was not going to happen for me.
Of course.
So, and here I am, just be persistent,
And so what was the first ever skincare product that you fell in love with?
Oh my God, fell in love? I don't know.
Okay.
Well, okay. So I would say the first product that I used frequently was St. Ives apricot scrub. But like
the thing that they tell us to avoid, like the plague now.
Yeah, I have a personal vendetta against that product because, back in the day, I thought I could scrub myself to beautiful skin. And, really, I blame it on my mother because she had it. So I just used it.
You use it.
And she didn't care. So
well, now that you're here, though, and you now know that the apricot scrub is not the thing to use and so on and so forth. What made you decide, once you became a dermatologist, that you also wanted to make content around dermatology?
So it's funny, for me going through, my medical training and medical school, the thing that we were always telling patients was don't Google your symptoms because you're just going to get a page that tells you
that you're going to die.
You're going to die. It's always like,
and I'm a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
Every time I Google my symptoms, I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Today's the last day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I found that it actually changed somewhat when I was a resident. So that's when I was doing my dermatology training, working as a doctor. And that's the time in the beginning of your career where you're supervised by like more senior doctors for every decision you make. So I will never forget, I had this pediatric patient who had a uncommon diagnosis. She had a rash called pityriasis rosea. And I mean, it's not a very serious condition.
Okay.
It's just something that not a lot of people know about. And she came to me already knowing the diagnosis. So I said, wow, you know, there's something going on. Maybe the landscape is changing. Maybe it's the newer generation who has a little bit more literacy around how to use the internet. But I was really impressed by this teenager who just caught her diagnosis. And so, you know, I started to look at what was out there. And what I found was there was some good information and there was also a lot of not so good information. So, you know what? I said it is probably better for not only, you know, the medical profession, but for public health if us doctors are out there providing sound evidence-based information in a way that's easy to understand.
Right.
At first, I thought, like, even if it's just for my own patients to be able to have content about their conditions that is about topics that I don't have enough time to really talk to them about in a regular visit, that would be great, but it kind of took off from there.
And it's interesting that you talk about doctors giving the right information because in some of your content, you are even debunking doctors.
Yes.
Who kind of like, I saw when there was a neurologist who had input about skincare. There's all of these things like that. So for you as we'll get into those that aren't, you know, board certified, that aren't doctors later. But for you watching doctors sometimes peddle information about things that aren't their specialty, how does that feel for you?
I mean, you know, it's a difficult line to tread, I think, because all of us do kind of have overlapping expertise. So for me, you know, a concept that came up recently was mouth taping when people are sleeping.
Yes.
So, you know, I basically said there's really no good research about it. And I don't think that people should be doing that without consulting their physician first, because they might have something going on with their airway that makes it not a good idea. And I had people in my comments saying like, oh, well, like, you're a dermatologist. What do you know? And I'm like, well...
But you told them to seek out a professional before doing it.
Yeah, I did. So I was like, well, you know, I obviously can't lay out. I did an entire medical degree. I did a full year doing hospital medicine, including several months working in an ICU where almost every patient was on a vent. So it's like, I know enough about these things to know when there is something that people should be asking their doctor about.
Right. And so when you get these comments now, how do you respond to people who think that they are smarter than the doctor?
You know what? It's difficult because I think that there has been so much mistrust that's been instilled in people around the medical profession. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Some of them are valid. Some I think really aren't. And I think that all I can do is continue to point people in the right direction about evidence and data and all of that, or how to vet their sources. To your point before about this, you know, neurologist giving out skincare advice. He's not a neurologist.
Oh.
He doesn't correct people, I believe, in my opinion, when people call him a neurologist, but he says he's a neuroscientist, but I believe he doesn't even have a PhD in that. So, like, that's the thing. So it's easy for...
That is so crazy, because do you know how many times I've sought out advice from him from videos?
Oh, really?
On like so many different topics. Oh, my hopes and dreams.
I think that sometimes it's just, you got to be able to dig for the information on these people. So like for me, I have an MD. I'm board certified to practice dermatology. You could look all of this up. It's readily available online. Like, you could go, there is a website that New York State has where you could get my medical license number and all of that. And all of that is there for, you know, patients to be able to like verify that their doctors are real. But for your online sources, you could do that too. What I would tell people, aside from just vetting their sources in that way, is to be able to parse out what content is fear-mongering. So, if they have this hook that's like, your products could be killing you or something like that, you really want to take a step back and rather than immediately having an emotional reaction, maybe like listen to the rest of what they're saying and look for other sources of information. Don't just be like, I heard a TikTok that said da-da-da-da-da. Because, even influencers are doing it. There's one influencer that a few months ago, she was like, did you hear about this study that shows that filler causes cancer?
I mean, let social media tell it everything causes cancer. I've been told that me using deodorant my entire life was going to give me cancer.
It's things like that. So it's like, when I dug into that, there wasn't a study done. It was, one talk by one doctor who was conjecturing about long-term effects of fillers. And then I ended up, as more information came out, there's not even really data. He was looking at some very specific finding in a handful of patients who had a ton of work done. So it's like, it's not representative of the general population. Nothing about the study said anything about cancer. Well, actually, it wasn't even a study. It was a case series, which is just more narrative. Nobody got cancer. So I think social media really rewards the sensationalized content that's put out there. And another thing that I think people should look out for, in regards to this, neuroscientist that we were talking about, he's selling supplements too. So, if somebody in one breath is going to tell you that there's this new health concern that you had no idea about, and then in the next try to sell you something to fix it, you should be wary of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to get specific. These are some things that you've debunked. Because speaking of things we heard on TikTok, and this is coming from someone who 2 years ago ruined their skin barrier. I completely ruined my skin barrier 2 years ago listening to TikTok. I was doing the dial soap, tea tree oil, and vitamin E every day. My skin was ruined. And since then, things have been different. Thank God. But okay. If you take your phone with you to the toilet, that causes acne. Taking hot showers causes acne. The neurologist giving skincare advice. No microbes and human feces as a face mask. What is the most outrageous thing you've ever heard?
It's hard to say because I've heard so much. There is a lot of people using bodily fluids to improve their skin. I really feel like influencers are doing this for shock value. And earlier this year, we reached really the apex of this when this Brazilian influencer was claiming that she was putting her own fecal material on her face, which was she really doing that? I don't know. But
I pray not.
Yeah, I hope not. But it's like people will do anything for clout.
Yep.
On the flip side of that, it's, what do people really believe and what are they trying to peddle? So, for me, the most egregious thing is as a dermatologist, I've seen so many people with skin cancer.
Yeah.
And so, people who are out there trying to discredit using sunscreen or saying that, the sun and baking in the sun is the best thing for your health. Sunscreens are dangerous, or consuming seed oils is the reason that people get sunburnt, or, the key to a healthy life is exposing your perineum to sun. The perineum is the area between one's genitals.
That's what I know. They think that you should put it in direct.
Yes, which is an awful idea.
Do you? I'm sure you haven't studied this, but do you know what would happen if we chose to put our perineum straight to the sun?
So, as far as I'm aware, there is no data, science evidence showing any health benefit from that. I also think it kind of creates the perfect storm for like really bad skin cancer. It's an area that people never exposed to the sun, so it's
Right.
easy to burn. It's also, you know, an area where a lot of people have HPV. It's something that happens. So HPV and sun exposure both predisposed to a certain type of skin cancer called squamous cell carcinoma.
Oh.
And those cancers, especially when they're in the genital area, can metastasize inside the body and be life-threatening. So
do not put your perineum to the sun.
Yeah.
Just keep it indoors.
Yeah, I would say
or covered.
Yeah, it's best to keep all of your skin protected from the sun. Obviously, sunscreen.
But you don't need sunscreen there.
Clothes are enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Clothes are enough.
Okay. So what I love is that you were talking about speaking of the girl that said that if you take your phone into the bathroom with you, that's why you have acne. And you explained, though, that yes, there are bacteria that acne does thrive off of, because I think that on a base level, people don't know what acne is, right? It's something that we're told that we're going to get through puberty, and something that women like me and so many people that I know, it never stops, right? It doesn't stop after puberty. So just on a base level, what is acne?
So acne is a chronic inflammatory skin condition. Its main finding are comedones, which are pore blockages. They're usually made out of oil and dead skin. And there's several contributing factors to acne, including inflammation, hormones, bacteria, as you alluded to, but not in the way that a lot of people think. Oil production, etc. And I think people don't realize how common it is. I think some of the figures are around 80% of people in their lifetime will have acne, and up to 30% of women in their 30s will still have it or will develop it for the first time during that decade. So it is really pervasive. And I think maybe that's the reason that I focus on debunking misinformation about it, because I know so many people struggle with it. I had severe acne for many years. So I know how psychologically debilitating it can be too. And we have research about that showing that people with acne are more likely than, matched controls to suffer with anxiety, depression, and even suicidality. So
really,
yeah. So it really is more than just skin deep. Not to make light of it, but yeah.
But it is. Yeah. So then what is your reaction though? Because I used to ask people all the time. I have so many friends with seemingly like perfect skin, right? And it's like, now they know that there are many factors to this perfect skin. But back before I was almost 30, people would be like, oh, I drink so much water. Or, oh, like I eat clean, which I will say eating clean it can help everything, right? It helps everything. But I think a lot of times water and clean eating is pegged as like it can fix all of your skin woes. How much would you say what you ingest does play a role into your skin health?
We don't know a ton about it. So, there's a lot of different things that have been touted, from eating a lot of antioxidants. We don't really have data to show that does anything. Taking certain vitamins. Nothing's really there. When it comes to acne, a lot has been said about dairy or high glycemic index foods. Yep. What I say to my patients is like, I don't usually recommend dietary changes as a, first line across the board recommendation for people. Obviously, if they notice differences with certain things, they could try to, alter their diet for that. But the data that is out there is very piecemeal and isn't very generalizable. And I think that's something that maybe even a lot of dermatologists miss, because, in their clinical practice, it's very fast paced. And, they're like, well, there was a very reputable paper published, but if it's looking at a particular type of person, a particular age group, a particular part of the world, then it's difficult to say that you could generalize that to all people. And we also don't have good data showing that actually changing somebody's diet impacts their acne. It's more correlations, which if you've never heard this before, take it to the grave. Correlation does not equal causation. Just because two things are happening at the same time doesn't mean that one causes the other.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So it could help, but we have no clue.
Yeah.
We have no clue. Mm-hmm. And you also said, you said that you found, and I want to be clear, he is not saying shower. Don't shower, guys. That's not what he's saying. But you said washing your face once a day, though, was helpful.
For some people.
For some people.
So it tends to be people with drier skin or more sensitive skin. So for instance, like me, in my own personal experience, I have rosacea. So my skin can get very red or irritated easily. So it responds well to me washing it once a day. I choose at night. So, taking the day off. And then in the morning after I've slept, I rinse my face with water. In general, I don't think people need to be worried about being dirty from that because, like, if your bed is that dirty, you have a bigger fish to fry. But also, in general, my recommendation for bathing is once a day for everybody. So if you're taking that shower once a day, it's the same thing. Clean your face once a day with a cleanser. And then, the other time, in case I was like a little sweaty at night, like I just rinse with water and go about my business.
And speaking of cleansing, exfoliation specifically, because I think that, and things have changed now, but when we were growing up, it was always like physical exfoliators, right? It was like always get the cleansers with the microbeads. And like it had to feel like we were sloughing our faces off for what we thought was going to be this glass perfect skin. What are your recommendations around exfoliating? And I'd like both just generally. And then if you could, does that differ for black and brown skin?
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So exfoliation can be helpful in some cases. So for things like dyspigmentation, like dark spots, for texture issues, in some cases for acne. However, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that exfoliating your skin is not something that's necessary for everybody to do. We have a natural process by which our skin cells mature and then detach themselves. So your skin cells are constantly coming off whether you're exfoliating them off or not. I don't generally prefer physical exfoliants, so the things that you're talking about, like the scrubs that used to be all the rage, just because they could be a little bit uneven, they could be very irritating, and I do prefer chemical exfoliants. So those are products that are going to have things like glycolic acid, salicylic acid, mandelic acid, that are going to chemically exfoliate, and really what they're doing is by changing the pH or the acidity of the outer layers of the skin, kind of breaking bonds between the skin cells and allowing them to come off a little bit sooner. It's going to be very individual what products are good for what people, but in general, I don't see a reason for most people to exfoliate more than 2 or 3 times per week. And
that's toners too.
Yeah.
Like all exfoliators. Oh.
And so good thing that you brought up, exfoliating toners. Those exfoliating solutions are going to be a little bit more irritating or difficult to stand than something like an exfoliating cleanser where you're washing it off of the skin. So like for me, since I have sensitive skin, I prefer to use exfoliating cleanser with a chemical exfoliant in it, like glycolic acid, rather than using a leave-on that, you just put it on and go, just because it's going to be less irritating, but you're still getting the exfoliation. When it comes to black and brown skin,
right,
I think there has been a lot of misinformation and people conjecturing that certain products that are out there are like not black skin or brown skin friendly, or glycolic acid is like not good for skin of color. And that is totally untrue. I think that one of the considerations that we need to take into account with more melanated skin is that in general, people with more melanin are going to be more likely to hyperpigment or get dark spots if their skin becomes irritated by something. So I think people took that and kind of ran with it and said, oh, anything that could irritate your skin is bad for your skin if you have skin of color. And actually, it's more complex than that because exfoliation, especially if you're getting dark spots, can be very helpful.
Right.
So, I've heard some people, some estheticians, et cetera, say, hey, rather than going for glycolic acid, if you have skin of color, you should probably go for something like mandelic, which is going to be a little bit gentler, lactic acid, because it's less likely to irritate the skin. That's an opinion. I think in general, everybody should start low, go slow with everything, and start at kind of the gentlest option. And this goes for everybody across the board when it comes to anything that could be irritating, acids, retinoids, etc., and slowly ramp it up and see how your skin responds.
And so I'm happy that you mentioned estheticians. Mm-hmm. Because I think that a lot, and correct me if this observation is wrong, but it does seem like a lot of the false narratives around skin that are being peddled on social media tend to be more from estheticians than like board certified dermatologists.
Yeah. I mean, I think that from what I know of the profession, a lot of what some estheticians are taught is like passed down through generations of estheticians, because there are some master estheticians that do a lot of training, and they can work in like a lot of different environments. So some of them work in spas, some of them open their own spas and centers where they do treatments on their clients. Some of them work in doctors' offices, like work with dermatologists like me. And they tend to have a real wealth of knowledge. I think that what has happened recently is like there was a boom of people wanting to become estheticians.
Especially with COVID.
Yeah. So there has been a ton of new programs out there, and a lot of them provide education via brands. So, a school will work with a certain brand, and if I want to name names, one that I've seen that puts out a lot of misinformation is a brand called Obagi, which is sold.
That's such an OG.
Yeah.
Because it's sold in medical offices.
It's sold in medical offices and spas, basically. So there are certain training programs where they're an Obagi program. Obagi was started by a dermatologist, and they wrote a textbook for the estheticians. And this dermatologist has really weird ideas about, don't moisturize the skin because it gets lazy, or that everybody needs to exfoliate. These are just things that I've heard. So a lot of these estheticians, if that's all they're learning, they're going forward. And I've had some of them literally like come at me and be like, well, I heard from a dermatologist. I'm like, who? And they're like, well, it's in Dr. Obagi's textbook. Okay. And I'm like, okay, well, he has no citations in there.
Right.
That's just his ideas. And just to say, like, not everybody who has an MD after their name, or not everybody who's a dermatologist, is right about everything. Like,
right.
I could be wrong about stuff too, or there are certain things within our field that are opinion based. And it depends on how you interpret the science that's out there. So, I mean, I think that maybe that's where some of it comes from.
Okay.
There's a lot of variation, I've heard, in the education that they get. So some of them are a lot more open-minded and want to learn about the science behind everything, because maybe that's what was, sold to them as what the profession is, versus others are very, headstrong. And I think especially some that are like fresh out of their training program are like armed with all these like ideas, and they haven't really gone out there and touched a lot of skin and gotten the experience to say, hey, I have my own ideas about this now.
So based on your experience, yay or nay, slugging?
I think it could be really helpful, especially in wintertime for people with drier skin or for sensitized skin. I think what people get wrong about it is it's really only taking a thick ointment like Vaseline, Aquaphor. CeraVe has a healing ointment, just like a pea-sized amount to the whole face at night. It's nothing too crazy. It just adds an occlusive layer that helps your skin hold on to more hydration.
Glass skin, yay or nay?
I mean, there's no such thing, in my opinion. Like, you know, you want to be really shiny? Great. Love it. But I think a lot of what we see on social media is people will do their skincare, immediately shoot a video, put on a face oil, have the ring light going, and you don't see what that skin looks like in an hour or two, which, you know what? I think anybody can look whatever way that they want, but I think having that idea as something that people need to strive for, it's not realistic.
Baking soda in skincare, yay or nay?
I mean, I don't know if it's used widely in formulation, but people who use it just like out the box.
Yeah, I saw it out the box on TikTok.
Not a great idea. So our skin has what's called an acid mantle. It basically means our skin's a little bit more acidic on the outside. And the way that that helps us is by kind of keeping microbes out and by kind of calibrating all the processes in the skin to that acidic pH. Baking soda is a base, which means it's the opposite of an acid. So you could kind of throw off that acidic balance. It could be irritating too. And I think it's never a good idea to play chemist at home. So, you know, you have no control over the concentration if you're just like mixing some in your hands and throwing it on your face.
A 10 plus step skincare routine, yay or nay?
I mean, there's no need for it. If it's something that works for somebody and they enjoy it and they find it soothing and they're doing it in such a way that it's not damaging their skin, like, sure, great. But like, who has the time? Also, it's kind of been proven that, you know, the more products that one uses, the more predetermined they are to developing an allergy to something. So, and it makes sense. You know, you need exposure to develop an allergy to something. So the more stuff you're exposed to, the more risks you run. I always say, you know, I prefer an intentional approach to skincare. Every product in somebody's routine should have a purpose. If you can't name what that purpose is, what is it doing there? It's just overconsumption. And if you're doing duplicates of things like, oh, like 3 hydrating serums, I don't really think that that's giving you any more benefit than using just one. So kind of take out the duplicates, really think about why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And if it's just because, you know, TikTok told you that you need to have this step, then maybe skip it, save some money, save the environment. Yay
or nay, eye patches. We see them everywhere. Every brand is making eye patches.
So similar to the idea behind slugging, it's using occlusion to either help ingredients penetrate a little bit better or to hold more moisture in. One thing that I hate is single-use skincare products. So there are some eye patches that I've come across that it's like it comes in a pouch that's like a tin pouch. You open it. It's like a plastic case. You open the case. They're hydrogel eye patches with paper that you peel off. You put them on. You wear it for 20 minutes and then you take it off. And think about the amount of trash that was created just for a single use, when you could have used an eye cream that you could get, I don't know, dozens of uses out of. One idea that I like for both eye patches and sheet masks is reusable eye patches and sheet masks. There are certain brands that I love that make them. So one is called Dew Skin. They have these silicone under eye patches.
That's DIEUX, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So under eye silicone patches that you get to customize with whatever serum you want. After you're done with them, they come in a tin. You wash them with soap and water, put them in their tin, and you get to use them forever. Another brand that I like is called Experiment. So they have a really cool silicone sheet mask called Avant Garde. And it basically makes you look like an alien. It's bright green.
Okay. So it's fun. So the girls like fun things that they can post in and
Yeah, it's great for selfies. It has really nice like ear loops to hold it on your face. So you could like go about your business and do stuff while you're doing it. And again, it's customizable. So you could use whatever serum you want underneath. And when you're done, soap and water, hang that bad boy to dry and like you'll be able to use it forever basically.
Yay or nay? These 10 to 13-year-olds in Sephora buying Drunk Elephant and using baby facial and wanting the drops. And
I think I have kind of a hot take on this. I think prior to recently, people weren't having their kids do enough for their skin. So, parents don't think enough about like sunscreen or moisturizing a lot of the time. I found that in my practice, you know, parents get good at those things if their kid has a condition. So it's like if their kid has eczema,
right,
they're moisturizing that kid twice a day. They're thinking about
what was it? The rice baths. They're putting them in everything.
They're
milk baths. Yes.
They're doing all of those things.
Yep.
Versus, you know, parents where, you know, their kid's skin is just like easy. They're not thinking as much about it. The flip of that is I think that people need to be on top of their kids as far as using like actives, or I don't think there's a reason that a 9 or a 10-year-old should be using glycolic acid just for fun. And I think some of these brands, it's very alluring for these kids because they have cute little minis or they all come in different colors. So it's like collecting them. And I mean, that's not really the way. I would say work with your kids to get them on a skincare routine that makes sense. And there are great brands out there that make sensitive, skin-friendly, kid-friendly products that they'll be able to use. One that I've recommended for some parents is a brand called Bioma.
Okay, that's BYOMA, guys.
Yeah, so I love their products for me, but they're very skin barrier focused, and all of the packaging is very bright, colorful, and fun while still being as eco-friendly as possible and gentle on the skin. Mostly, they do have some exfoliants and things like that, but for like a gentle cleanser, it comes in like a really cute bottle that's easy to recycle, but also, you know, your kids will like to have on their shelf.
At-home extractions, yay or nay?
Really, mostly a nay. I mean, I think that if you've ever seen those Comedone extractor tools, you know, the metal thing.
I have. I know I have one. I probably should.
I don't think anybody should have one of those in their house. I barely like even using them like in my practice just because it's so easy to damage the skin with them. So I don't think anybody untrained should be just taking that to their face because it's not good for everything. I think, you know, the trend should be towards going to the root cause. However, you know, for people who want their pores to look a little bit more refined, things that I like is a Biore pore strip.
Really?
Oh man, yeah. Like this.
Oh, now that is not what I. Okay, yes, please.
So a lot of derms are against it, but those specific pore strips, when used correctly, are non-damaging to the skin. Biore has this technology that they developed that's like very specific towards like not waxing your face, but follow the instructions. Like you should not be ripping it off like a Band-Aid. Another thing that I like specifically before events is like clay masks.
What's your favorite clay mask?
I really like Glow Recipe makes one that's hydrating. And it's a clay mask because clay will draw out some excess oil and will temporarily make pores look a little bit more refined. It lasts like an evening. So
I remember we used to do them all the time. Like it was like because when you wiped off the clay mask, your skin was like it felt so stripped and it was shiny, and you're like, yeah. Did it.
So part of the reason that I like the Glow Recipe mask is they actually have hydrating ingredients like hyaluronic acid in it. So it's like, it's not too stripping. You're still getting the clay. Your pores look nice for, you know, the night. And it's like a nice little add-on.
Acne patches, yay or nay?
I like them, but I think that in general, people turn to them a little bit too much. Like if your entire face is like covered in patches every day, maybe something else needs to be happening. I think they're useful here and there. Like some of them are really good as spot treatments. So they have like little micro darts in them with active ingredients. It's like that could be nice for a deep pimple, or if you have one that's coming to the surface and draining a little bit and you want to put a hydrocolloid patch on there to just absorb any of the fluid, that could be helpful. But I've seen some brands where it's like they come out with patches that you could cover like a huge strip of your face with, and I'm like, I don't think that that's necessarily helpful.
And last, because this is coming from one of your videos, sunscreen sticks.
Ooh, yeah, that's a difficult one. So I think that people love them because they're so portable. So they think about using them for reapplication, but it's difficult to gauge how much of it you're using. And you really do need to use more than you think. So I tend to not recommend them. However, like with that or sunscreen setting spray or the powders, it's like all of these things will not give you the protection that you need because you're not putting on enough. Every product that's marketed in the US with an SPF rating, they use a specific amount of the product. So it's 2 milligrams per square centimeter.
It was, which also, I know that I saw this once on social media. That is the equivalent to like a teaspoon, like if you poured it into a teaspoon.
So for most people, their face to face, neck, and ears will be about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of liquid sunscreen. That's like a rule of thumb. That's not even exact, but I always say it's more than you think. So, for instance, sunscreen powders that come in the little brush that you brush on, to get 2 milligrams per square centimeter of that powder, you will look like a powdered donut or something. Okay. Like it's more than you would ever use. It's the same thing for like, my foundation has SPF in it. You are not putting on if somebody is using that much makeup, I have questions because it's like you will look like the peanut butter baby. It's so much. So that's why in general, I tell people to go for like a liquid or a cream preparation. One thing that I tell my patients is, look, if you wear makeup all day and the only way that I could get you to reapply is with that setting mist that's not giving what it's supposed to give, I would rather you do that than nothing.
Than do nothing at all. I know I'm guilty of that. I'm a full face girl. And so it's always just like.
Yeah. So, I mean, to each their own. Obviously, the recommendation is going to be to like truly reapply enough. I did a video with a particular sunscreen spray recently, which was like a body spray, but I tried to use it to like do my face to like prove how much it was. And it was like 20 sprays of this spritz sunscreen. And like, I look greasy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Of course you did.
And also those sprays aren't perfect as far as like getting the right coverage. So, I mean, I don't think people should get so caught up in being perfect. Just be aware of what it is and obviously try to be more perfect or go higher on days when the UV index is higher. You're going to be outdoors for long periods of time. One myth that I think needs to go away is like, oh, anything over SPF 30 is a waste. Beyond that, you're not getting much more protection. Okay. And it's been shown in actual human studies that when you give somebody an SPF 50 versus an SPF 100, that they're less likely to burn when given the 100. And this is more, the situations that they tested were like outdoor situations where people were outside for longer periods of time or doing outdoor activities. So the way that I think about that is I'll tell my patients, like, go for the SPF 100 if you're like outdoors all day, if you're going on a hike, if it's, high summer and you have a lot of skin exposed, or, even for me, like I'll tend towards that if I know, like even on my face, if I'm out and about all day, but I'm a little bit extra, but I'll try to use an SPF 100. But it's really about, being aware of what your situation is and also, use protective clothing, hats, sunglasses, all of those things are sun protection too. Seek shade when you can. Just do your best.
And so now that this is we're done with the yay or nays. But when it comes to maturing skin, right, I think anti-aging has been such an interesting thing. Even the way that they say it now, right? It used to be anti-aging. Now they're not using those terms like that. If you could say 3 products or 3 ingredients that you feel like those with maturing skin need to incorporate into their skincare routine that say we wouldn't have to use, what would those be?
You know, I think it's interesting that you bring up like the reticence of a lot of people to say anti-aging, because I think a lot of it is well-intentioned. However, what people don't realize is that the majority of the signs of skin aging that we see are due to sun damage for a lot of people. And I mean, that shows up differently for different people and on different skin tones. So for somebody who's pasty like me, it could be wrinkles or loss of firmness. For somebody with more melanated skin, it could be dark spots. But that is the primary preventable cause of skin aging. So I'm going to say this directly to camera. If you're not protecting your skin from the sun, you need to start. For any anti-aging routine or for anyone really. So that would be my number 1. My number 2 that I always turn to because it has the most evidence are retinoids.
Okay. You were going to say that.
So we have the most data about anti-aging probably for tretinoin, which is a prescription retinoid.
Love it. It is the best thing that I've ever decided for my skin. Well, I didn't decide. A derm decided it for me, and that was the best decision she ever made.
Yeah, so it has a lot of different benefits. It is an acne treatment. It is something that we do use for uneven skin tone or for pigmentary disorders, and it has shown a lot of efficacy at turning back the signs of skin aging, increasing collagen synthesis, helping with age spots. So that would probably be my number 1. When it gets to parsing out different retinoids and stuff that's available over the counter or different prescriptions, it's a little bit more difficult to say this one is the best. But what I found is whatever people are able to be more consistent with is probably better for them, because retinoids can be very irritating or difficult to get started on. There's a lot of information out there about how people can do that a little bit more easily, but that would probably be my number 1. And, well, my number 2, I guess. My number 3 is probably vitamin C. So behind retinol, we do have a lot of data about vitamin C as far as supporting collagen synthesis, evening out skin tone, and in its role as an antioxidant. So sun and pollution and just being out in the environment, we're exposed to a lot of free radicals. So these are these particles that basically damage your skin. And what antioxidants like vitamin C do is they scavenge those. So instead of those free radicals damaging your skin, your collagen, etc., it's going to like latch onto vitamin C and then it's done. Again, with vitamin C, best evidence we have is for pure vitamin C, which is L-ascorbic acid. Okay. There is other data about vitamin C derivatives. So there's, vitamin C esters, there's ethylated vitamin C, there's one called THD. They all have different levels of evidence, but the reason there's so many derivatives is that vitamin C could be a little bit irritating, but also pure vitamin C is a little bit finicky as a molecule. So the products may not have optimal efficacy through their entire half-life, but we do have the most data about that form of vitamin C.
And before we wrap up, I do want to briefly touch on filler. So, injectables in general, right? So I got my first Botox treatment at 22. Everybody told me I shouldn't have done that. They were like, why do you do it? I did not believe them. I thought it was a crock of shit. Until recently, I'm almost 30, and I've noticed that it used to be the Botox would last forever. My head wouldn't move. Everybody's like, why did you get it? Your head didn't move. The head is moving. Now, that could be for a myriad of reasons. My stress levels, I'm getting older, all of those things. Do you believe that there is an age that people should start getting injectables?
No.
Okay.
So when it comes to something like botulinum toxin, so brands like Botox, Dysport, Daxxify, Juvo, all of those are different versions of botulinum toxin. The way that they work is by basically cutting off the crosstalk between nerve cells and muscles. And we use them mainly cosmetically for expression lines. So those are the lines that we get in our forehead, between our eyebrows, or crow's feet around the eyes, which are the first signs of aging for a lot of people. There are other uses for Botox that are like a little bit more complex, but that's the main reason that so many people get it. Botulinum toxins are the most commonly performed aesthetic procedure in the world. And the reason for that is that it's easy to have done. There are a lot of different uses or areas that it could be used. As procedures go, it's not quite so expensive. It is expensive.
Of course.
Any of this stuff is expensive, but it's not going to bankrupt you. And the safety profile is great. So the issue with prescribing a certain age that people should start Botox is those expression lines. Some people have them very young and some people don't. And if they're not there, they're probably not worth treating.
Okay.
So I always say if somebody comes to me at 18 and they're getting expression lines, they are a good candidate. If somebody comes to me at 65 and they don't have those lines,
they're not a good candidate.
They do not need it. There has been a lot of talk about preventative Botox. We don't have good data to say either which way, whether or not that's a thing. In general, I tell people if you're starting to notice the lines and they are shallow, that's a great time to start because they won't get more deep set. Based on logic, if you cut off those movements for a lot of the time, you will probably see that those lines don't come up, but it's difficult. It might be difficult to predict whether people are going to get those lines at all. So in general, for my patients, if they come to me and they're at the very beginning of getting the lines, we could discuss doing light injections of Botox. But if they don't have anything at all, generally, like I'm not in the business of like taking people's money for no reason. Right. There is one case report in the medical literature that's very interesting that people point to a lot where there are these two twins, identical twins, two women, and over the course of 15 years, one got Botox pretty consistently, maybe like twice a year, not every 3 months religiously, and the other one only got it twice in that 15-year period. And they compared their faces, and the one who got the Botox more often did have less lines and probably look a little bit more youthful. However, there are a lot of variables there. Obviously, it's just two people. Identical twins are like a perfect comparison, and that's why we go to that a lot. But there could have been other things in these two twins' lives that were different.
Expressions, stress levels, everything.
They lived in different countries, too.
Oh, well, that's a big... I think
the one who got the Botox done quite often, I think, lived in Canada, and the one who didn't lived in Germany. Very different stuff going on. So, I mean, people will point to that, and it's interesting, but for me, like, that's not enough for me to say preventative Botox will work for everyone.
And when it comes to filler, is there any like benchmark for you where you're like, this is too much filler? Like, what is a sign that you might have overdone it with the filler?
I mean, it really depends on the person's face. I think if filler is not where it's supposed to be, that's an issue.
Migration is talked about a lot now.
Yeah. I don't think that we have definitive evidence that migration is a thing that happens. I think that a lot of the time it's just poor placement of the filler. But another thing that I have found is that in certain areas, these fillers don't metabolize as quickly. So for instance, under eye filler, very finicky. It tends to swell a little bit more and attract more water. So it could make people's under eyes look baggy. And it does last a really long time in that area. So sometimes people will come to you with bags that they got filler 10 years ago. And over the course of 10 years, like, you know, the actual structures under their skin change. We lose some fat pads here. The actual opening for our eye and our skull gets larger. So the filler could shift because all of your face has shifted. And sometimes people are like, why am I getting these bags? And you just dissolve the filler and it's like, okay, the bags are gone.
But we, like you said, we didn't take into account the natural shifts of the face.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good to know. Okay. So this is the rapid fire as we wrap up the rapid fire thing. So of course, this is called According to Blake, but this segment is According to Dr. Angelo.
Ooh.
So according to Dr. Angelo, what is your favorite skincare treatment? In-office skincare treatment?
Oh my God. It's really going to depend on the person.
Okay.
But I think probably, oh my God, this is like choosing one of my children. Right now, I'm very into laser resurfacing. So fractionated resurfacing is when we use a laser to selectively damage skip areas of the skin. So we're not damaging the entire surface of the skin. You're just drilling little holes that your skin then fills in with fresh tissue. It's great for skin quality, gives you a little bit of tightening, and I think it's very versatile.
That's what I was about to say. Is it safe for black and brown skin?
It is. Yeah,
right.
You just have to know the settings.
Okay. Retinol or retinoids or acids?
Retinoids every day. Yeah, like they're so versatile. I think they're a little bit less finicky, less variable, more research. Yeah, retinol. Like if I was stuck on a deserted island, well, sunscreen would be first. But if you told me I could only have one treatment, I would be taking a tube of tretinoin.
Okay, liquid sunscreens or like gel sunscreens?
You know, it's whatever people's preference is. I really think that the most important thing is being consistent. So the best sunscreen is the one that you will use every day. So for me, I think I tend to go more towards like gel cream-like than something that's like truly a liquid, just because I feel like it's easier to get on without dripping it all over the place. But some people may like the feeling of a liquid better.
Well, I feel so enlightened. You've really opened my eyes to all these things that I'm like, and this is happening. And you're like, so there's actually no study to support what you think is happening with your face. Thank you so much. You're a wealth of information.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And you have to tell them where they can find you, where they can follow you, because you all must follow his content.
Thank you for saying that. And thank you for having me.
Of course.
At Dermangelo, Dermangelo, you know, very creative username. I'm a dermatologist. My name is Angelo on all social media. You will learn a lot and you will have a lot of fun too. Are you accepting new patients? I am. So if you find me on social media at the link in my bio, you can make an appointment in the New York City area. There we have it. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.